Imagine waking up one morning and realizing money has just been reinvented. Not by the United States, not by Europe, not by China, but by Africa, and by one man whose inventions have already challenged everything we thought we knew about energy, transportation, and technology. Today, Maxwell Chikumbutso has unveiled something that economists are calling the most disruptive financial breakthrough since Bitcoin. A new African currency, but not the way you think. This isn't paper. This isn't digital in the traditional sense. And it isn't controlled by banks, governments, or global financial institutions. In fact, nobody saw this coming. Because Chikumbutso's new financial system is built on a technology that the world still struggles to understand. A system powered by energy independence, decentralized verification, and Africa-first economics. And according to insiders, this currency could free entire nations from debt, foreign dependence, and manipulation overnight. But what exactly is this currency? Why did Chikumbutso create it? And why are global analysts already warning that this could change the balance of global power? Let's break it down. Chikumbutso didn't simply launch a currency. He launched an economic platform, one that uses African energy, African technology, and African innovation as the backbone of its value. The idea is shockingly simple. If you can control your power, you can control your economy. For decades, African currencies have been pegged, restricted, or influenced by external forces, colonial banks, global lenders, and political giants who saw Africa as a resource, not a competitor. But this time, the script is flipped. According to sources close to the project, the currency is tied to a real-time network powered by Chikumbutso's self-generating energy technology, meaning its value is backed not by gold, not by oil, but by sustainable, infinite African energy output. And that changes everything, because for the first time, Africa isn't just participating in the global economy, it's building a brand new one. A system where a farmer in Malawi, a trader in Ghana, a tech entrepreneur in Nairobi can all transact without relying on foreign networks or external validation. A system where value is created by Africa, measured by Africa, and controlled by Africa. This is why analysts are saying this could become Africa's financial independence moment. But the real shock came when Chikumbutso made a claim that startled economists. A currency is only as strong as the power that sustains it. So we built a currency powered by Africa itself. And that statement sent shockwaves across every major financial capital. Because if he's right, if Africa controls its energy, its technology, and now its own currency, then global power structures will never be the same again. But here's where it gets even more intriguing. This currency isn't just economic. It's strategic. Because Chikumbutso's team says the system is designed to function even in places with no internet, no banks, and no existing financial infrastructure. Meaning remote villages, informal markets, and rural economies can suddenly leap ahead into the modern financial world in a single step. No bureaucracy. No foreign dependency. No middlemen draining value. This is why early reports suggest several African nations are already in talks to adopt or integrate with the new system, and why global agencies are scrambling to understand how this will impact international trade. But if you think that's bold, wait until you hear what Chikumbutso plans next. Because sources say this currency isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of a much larger shift, one that could unify Africa in ways the world has never seen before. And what's coming next is even more disruptive. But if you think this new currency is bold, wait until you see what Chikumbutso plans next. Because according to a confidential document leaked from a closed-door meeting in Harare, this currency is only phase one of a much larger initiative. Something insiders are calling the African sovereignty grid. At first, analysts assumed this grid referred to energy. After all, Chikumbutso's innovations have already shaken the global power industries. But the leaked document showed something far more ambitious. A unified African ecosystem connecting energy, currency, identity, and trade into one self-sustaining network. The idea is revolutionary, almost unbelievable. Imagine this. A fisherman on the coast of Mozambique sells a morning catch. The transaction is instantly recorded, verified, and converted into Chikumbutso's new currency, without banks, without internet, without delays. At the same time, his home, powered by a small self-generating energy unit, feeds surplus electricity back into the local microgrid. That energy output automatically increases the value of the currency itself. His economic life, energy use, and income form a self-reinforcing loop, fully independent from external systems. This isn't science fiction. This is what Maxwell intends to deploy across the entire continent. And global powers are starting to panic. According to financial analysts in London and Washington, if Africa transitions to an energy-backed currency that cannot be manipulated by foreign banks, then Africa becomes immune to traditional economic pressure tools. Currency sanctions? Useless. Interest rate manipulation? Ineffective. Debt leverage? Gone. Africa's biggest vulnerability, external financial dependence, disappears overnight. And suddenly, Africa doesn't just join the global financial system. Africa rewrites it. But there's something even more shocking. A second leak, this time from a European intelligence briefing, claims that Chikumbutso's currency system is designed to scale beyond Africa, meaning any developing nation with access to renewable energy can plug into it, instantly bypassing the IMF, the World Bank, and the traditional global banking hierarchy. If true, this invention threatens the foundation of global finance itself. But when reporters asked Chikumbutso whether he intended to compete with global currencies, his answer stunned everyone. This is not competition. This is liberation. Africa has spent centuries paying for power it already had. Now we simply take it back. And this is where the world began to realize the truth. Chikumbutso is not launching a currency. He's launching a movement that challenges centuries of economic structure. A movement that gives Africa, for the first time in modern history, full control over its value, its resources, and its future. But if you're wondering how this new currency will actually hold up in real-world conditions, you're not alone. International experts, economists, and intelligence agencies are scrambling to understand how the system works and whether it could really become a global financial disruptor. What they don't know is that Chikumbutso has one more card to play. One more feature of this currency that hasn't been made public yet. One more breakthrough that ties everything together. Because according to a senior economist in Addis Ababa who reviewed the leaked draft, the final, undisclosed feature of Chikumbutso's new currency isn't just technical. It's philosophical. Sources close to his team claim that the last component of this financial system is something they call intrinsic human value indexing. It sounds abstract, even impossible, but here's what it means. For the first time in modern currency history, the value of money wouldn't be determined solely by markets, commodities, or political decisions, but by human contribution. Not in the form of labor, which is often exploited. Not in the form of productivity, which can be manipulated. But in the form of core societal impact, education, innovation, community support, environmental protection, and energy stewardship. In simple terms, a teacher in rural Zambia, a student developing new software in Kenya, or a community leader organizing clean water access in Malawi would directly increase the overall strength of the currency. Imagine a nation where uplifting society, not exploiting it, literally increases economic power. That's the future Chikumbutso is designing. And this is where the global financial establishment truly panicked. Because if a currency gains value through human advancement instead of debt, consumption, or speculation, then traditional financial systems lose the one mechanism they've relied on for a century: control through dependency. Think about it. If people generating clean energy strengthen the currency, if communities educating themselves strengthen the currency, if innovation strengthens the currency, then economic power suddenly flows from the bottom up, not the top down. No gatekeepers, no middlemen, no overseas approvals. This is why, according to leaked memos, 3 major international institutions have already labeled the project as globally destabilizing. Destabilizing to them. Because a currency built on energy independence plus human value destroys their leverage. And here's where the story shifts from revolutionary to historic. Inside sources say Chikumbutso is already in talks with 9 African nations to begin testing the system inside special economic zones. Each zone would operate as a microeconomy. Self-powered homes, self-powered transport, self-powered businesses, all transacting in Chikumbutso's new currency. If the pilot succeeds, even on a small scale, it could force other nations to adopt the system simply to stay competitive. And that's when a single, unmistakable truth becomes clear. This isn't just an African financial revolution. It's a blueprint for a new world economy, one where energy, innovation, and human value build wealth instead of draining it. But according to the latest reports, something else is happening behind the scenes. A major global power, one that feels threatened by this new system, has already begun preparing a counter-strategy. A strategy involving covert influence, diplomatic pressure, and attempts to infiltrate the technical development team. Because according to recent intelligence shared by a whistleblower inside one of the world's top financial monitoring agencies, the attempts to infiltrate Chikumbutso's team are no longer theoretical. They've already begun. At least 2 foreign research consultants have attempted to gain access to his project's internal development servers, posing as data analysts interested in renewable energy modeling. But what they didn't know was that Chikumbutso had already anticipated this. In fact, he built a decoy system, a completely fake version of his currency's architecture, realistic enough to fool experts, but hollow enough to reveal nothing. And when the infiltrators tried to breach it, something unexpected happened. Their tools triggered a silent trace, a digital fingerprint. Within minutes, the origin of the intrusion attempt was mapped back to a security facility operating under a foreign intelligence network, one known for involving itself in international currency stabilization. But here's the twist. Instead of reacting publicly, Chikumbutso and his team stayed completely silent.
Why?
Because they weren't just building a currency. They were building a shield. A defense system that protects the currency from manipulation, sanctions, and coordinated market attacks, the same tactics used historically to collapse independent economies. According to insiders, this defensive layer uses adaptive AI to track suspicious financial activity, identify manipulation patterns, and automatically adjust internal valuation metrics to neutralize attacks. In simple terms, if a hostile nation attempts to crash the currency refuses to break. If traders try to exploit loopholes, the system seals them in real time. If outside forces attempt to create artificial volatility, the currency stabilizes itself before damage spreads. This is when a high-ranking official from one East African nation privately made a bold statement. For the first time, Africa may have a currency that no superpower can bully. But the real shock came days later. An unexpected leak revealed that a major European bank has quietly begun running simulations on what would happen if this new currency were adopted across the African Union. The results, which were never meant to go public, showed something extraordinary. Within 10 years, the African continent could become the third largest economic bloc on Earth, without relying on loans, foreign credit, or external energy imports. And, according to the leaked findings, 2 industries would be hit hardest: global oil corporations, international lending institutions. Their business models depend on African dependency. This new currency eliminates that dependency entirely, which is why the pressure is now escalating. Diplomats have begun warning African governments. Think tanks are publishing concerns. Foreign advisors are urging caution. But behind closed doors, something even bigger is unfolding. A coalition of African innovators, engineers, economists, and policy leaders, many of whom have never collaborated before, are secretly aligning around Chikumbutso's vision. Because they've realized something that global powers hoped would remain hidden. This isn't just a currency. It's a reset button. A chance for Africa to rewrite the economic rules of the 21st century on its own terms. And now, for the first time since this movement began, a new rumor has emerged, one that could change everything about the timeline of this revolution. Apparently, Chikumbutso is preparing to unveil one more component of the system, something he has not shared with any government, bank, or institution. According to a source close to the project, this undisclosed component is not a technology and not a financial algorithm. It's something far more disruptive. A governance mechanism. A system designed to prevent any single nation, politician, corporation, or foreign power from ever controlling the currency. Not through laws, not through policy, but through mathematical sovereignty. Instead of politicians deciding inflation, valuation, or supply, the new system uses a distributed consensus model built across multiple African regions. Each node operates independently. No single government can manipulate it. No foreign bank can interfere. No external force can override it. It is, according to insiders, the world's first politically immune currency. And that's precisely why global powers are becoming uneasy. One senior U.S. financial advisor, speaking off record, expressed genuine concern. If Africa adopts a currency that can't be controlled or influenced, we lose leverage. Not just economic leverage, geopolitical leverage. And that statement reveals the real fear. Because for decades, influence over African currencies has meant influence over African policy, influence over trade deals, influence over resource exploitation. But a self-governing, self-stabilizing, self-protecting currency? That removes every pressure point. For African nations, this means freedom. For global players, it means uncertainty. And that's why the next part of the leak is causing shockwaves. Maxwell Chikumbutso has reportedly been approached by a private coalition of African tech billionaires, names that rarely appear in media, offering to fund full deployment across the continent without relying on foreign investment. Their goal? Make Africa the first region in the world with an energy-independent economy powered by an independent currency. But here's where things take an unexpected turn. Recently, a confidential document surfaced suggesting that Chikumbutso's team is already preparing pilot cities where the currency will be tested in live conditions. These cities will run self-powered EV transport fleets, local businesses using the new digital currency, a decentralized energy grid, automated transaction monitoring that removes corruption risks, a public economic system visible to all citizens in real time. In other words, the world's first next-generation African smart economy, built without Western oversight. And according to one African government official involved in early discussions, if this succeeds, Africa will leapfrog 40 years of development in less than 10. But success also brings danger. Foreign agencies have now begun classifying the project as a strategic disruption risk. Certain multinational corporations have started lobbying against it. And powerful institutions are pressuring African leaders to slow things down. Yet Chikumbutso seems unfazed. Because according to one of his closest associates, he is preparing to reveal this mysterious final component publicly, something that will make the currency unstoppable even if governments or corporations attempt to block it. And now, everything leads to a single moment. A moment Maxwell Chikumbutso himself has reportedly described as the point of no return. In the coming announcement, the one insiders say will be streamed globally, Chikumbutso is expected to finally unveil the final element of his new currency system. Not the technology, not the network, not the financial model, but the philosophy behind it. A message meant for every African nation, every entrepreneur, every citizen who has waited generations for financial independence. According to leaked briefing notes, his statement will be simple. Africa will no longer borrow its future. That's it. Not a declaration of war. Not an attack on foreign governments. Just a promise that Africa's destiny will finally be determined by Africans. Economists around the world are already bracing for impact. Analysts predict massive shifts in global trade. Investors are watching the continent with an urgency they've never shown before. Some fear it. Others welcome it. But none can ignore it. Because if this currency succeeds, if it truly works the way insiders claim, then Africa won't just be catching up. It will be leading. A continent long underestimated, rising on the strength of its own innovation. A new financial age, starting in the very place the world once tried to keep at the margins. A revolution, ignited not by politicians or foreign institutions, but by a quiet engineer from Zimbabwe who refused to accept the limits others placed on him. This is more than economics, more than technology, more than policy. It is the beginning of a new chapter, one the world is now watching with wide eyes and, in some cases, trembling hands. Because once this currency launches, one thing becomes certain.